Welcome back to The Perspective. I'm with Douglas Broderick, the head of the UN in Indonesia, talking about the Millennium Development Goals. Douglas, what challenges still remain?
There's a few challenges. We have had good opportunities, but we have the challenge of inequalities. And this is not a unique problem for Indonesia. It's a problem throughout East Asia and lots of places in the world, like Brazil, that the inequalities in income, the disparities between the rich and the poor, have been increasing. And Indonesia's Gini coefficient, which measures that, has gone up to 0.41, which is an area of concern for us. And we have to have large programs, and the new administration is well aware of this and tackling this with the economic livelihoods, the economic infrastructure activities. But inequalities is something very significant and something that all of us need to work with, especially in partnership with the Indonesian government, to tackle. Another problem that we're facing is of very serious concern for the UN, and we're working very hard with ministries on the maternal mortality rate. And Indonesia, unfortunately, has a high maternal mortality rate. The rate is around 300 per 100,000. And that's a challenge for us in terms of the 5 million women who give births per year in Indonesia. We're working in a pilot project to address that, especially rural areas in Indonesia, in 69 of the 501 districts in Indonesia. We'd like to be able to long-term reduce the maternal mortality rate of women. And we all know that over 20 women die a day giving life in Indonesia, and that's too many for all of us, and something that is of concern both to the government and to the UN, and we're working on an acceleration plan with that. Another issue that we have, which is an issue that comes up in Southeast Asia, we have a stunting challenge, and we have 37% stunting rate, and that's children that are stunted in terms of growth under the age of 5 years old. And that's a pretty significant amount of children in Indonesia. You're talking about roughly about 1.5 million children a year, and you multiply that, roughly about 5 to 10 million children we're concerned about in terms of their stunting. And obviously that's progression into adulthood, and a stunted child doesn't learn. A stunted child has problems with education, and that's something obviously we're very concerned about in Indonesia, on addressing that long-term chronic stunting vis-a-vis for programs and activities in the future. Another concern that we have is the HIV. And right now in Indonesia, there's about 600,000 people HIV infected. We want to make sure the trend does not go up like that, but we reduce the trend line to make sure it's flat. We're working very hard with the National AIDS Authority, which has done a terrific job with the Ministry of Health in terms of their awareness, their advocacy, and their programs for zero infections, 100% retroviral treatment for HIV-affected people. But we all need to get together and do some more work on that, which we have, but we need to be aware and to continue that in the future. Another issue that's very important for us is water and sanitation. And I think you're aware that 60% of the Indonesian people have access to potable water and adequate sanitation facilities. So there's that 30 to 40% people that need adequate water and sanitation, and something that in the next RPJMN, the 5-year government plan, there's a target to reach or to go towards 100% on that. Indonesia, unfortunately, is the second largest country in the world with open defecation. So we have some challenges in terms of advocacy, in outreach, and getting programs to rural areas, and making sure that we have the training, the education, the facilities to prevent open defecation and move towards the sanitation facilities, wash facilities, and potable water in all villages, all of the towns of the 70,000 towns in Indonesia. But that remains a challenge for all of us in terms of Indonesia. The other thing that is very important for us is the quality of education. And this is a very, very big factor in Indonesia for all of us. At the end of the day, the average years of schooling per Indonesian citizen is 7.5 years. And this is not adequate in a competitive world, especially with the ASEAN Economic Community, and especially globalization, competitiveness, IT innovation, new companies, new manpower needed. So we want to work very hard with the Indonesian government, making sure that we put the quality of education to be top-notch and move up the 7.5 years of average schooling to a higher level. We also need to work
Douglas, I've got to hold you there. We've got to go to break, but let's
Okay.
go straight back into that, talking about education with Douglas Broderick, the top UN guy in Indonesia.